happens next is up to you.
Splinter Cell was a game series developed by French game studio Ubisoft. The series spans across 7 games, which all fall into the stealth action game genre. The core mechanics and gameplay of the series features classic stealth elements such as platforming, using light and dark to your advantage, and taking out your enemies when they least expect it. What differentiates the Splinter Cell series from other games in the stealth genre is that the history of the series, which spans from the early 2000s to 2010s, is a classic example of a form of media evolving in order to stay relevant and attract its ever-changing target audience. The evolution of this series demonstrates Stephen Neal's genre theory and shows that it can not only be applied to film, but also video games. So, what is Stephen Neal's genre theory? Stephen Neal believes that genre is made up of things that are repeated through conventional elements that people are familiar with. An example of this can be seen with horror movies. Most horror movies use dark lighting, tense music, jump scares,
Where'd it go?
and night settings. These are elements which are repeated throughout the horror film genre. In a nutshell, it means that genres are instances of repetition and difference. This applies similarly for video games. Using the stealth action video game genre as an example, we can see that there are many key elements which are repeated, such as taking someone out from the shadows in a stealth game like Dishonored, and Metal Gear Solid. Or blending into a crowd in Hitman and Assassin's Creed. There is a key difference in how we classify video games though. We do not look at a game's story like in a film, but its gameplay and gameplay elements instead. Take for example a game like Splinter Cell 1 on the PS2, which came out in 2002. If we look at the game's story, we can place it as being in the action spy thriller genre, similar to movies like Mission Impossible or a James Bond film. But we don't classify it as such. This is because for a video game, we instead look at what its gameplay entails rather than its story. The gameplay of Splinter Cell features stealth elements such as sneaking across levels, hiding in the shadows, and shooting when the situation calls for it. All this classifies it as falling into the stealth genre. The Splinter Cell series had become known for its slow, methodical, stealth-based gameplay. Stephen Neal also believes that difference is absolutely essential to the economy of genre. Mere repetition would not attract an audience. What this means is that genres must evolve, adapt, and borrow from other genres over time to stay relevant. Audiences will get bored of a genre simply sticking to a list of conventions without adding new things to make it fresh and different. In games, this evolution can be seen with the Splinter Cell series. The first Splinter Cell game, when compared to a more recent game in the series like Splinter Cell Conviction, shows an evolution from a slower paced, stealth-central game to faster paced gameplay with more action elements. This can be seen with how powerful the player was in these two games. In the first Splinter Cell, taking down multiple enemies through direct confrontation and combat was difficult, almost impossible even. The player was encouraged to take a safer approach through utilizing stealth mechanics. Overall, this made the series have a very slow, methodical gameplay flow to it. You weren't going to go in all guns blazing because the gameplay mechanics weren't really tailored for it, and because you could die with just a few bullets.
My God, Fisher, have you gone insane? The mission's over. My God, Fisher! My God, Fisher! That was pure madness! I don't know what to say. Get out of there! The mission's...
Whereas in the later game, Splinter Cell Conviction, which was released in 2010, Ubisoft evolved the series with more action and had the tag and execute mechanic, allowing players to take out multiple enemies effortlessly with a single button, unlike the prior games where it had to be done manually, which made it nigh impossible.
Target in sight! Fire! Holy cow!
There were also more action-focused levels in Conviction, like the Iraq level, where the player was left with a loud rifle that alerted enemies in the area. Compare this back to Splinter Cell 1, where you would always have a silenced pistol or weapon on hand. The developers also took out stealth elements, such as a noise meter which told you how much noise you made, making you mindful when tiptoeing around enemies. There were also now more action set pieces than before, making the game seem more action than stealth at times. All in an effort to follow the trends set by more popular games at the time like Call of Duty and Battlefield. This change and evolution was not only seen with Splinter Cell. Games like Metal Gear Solid shifted similarly from slow stealth-based gameplay to a more action-based game with gameplay rules centered around action. This evolution happened because players grew tired of the repetitive stealth-focused gameplay that games like Splinter Cell until that point had stuck to, leading to a decline in sales for Ubisoft. Difference was needed for the series to stay afloat after the poor sales of the prior game before Conviction, which all culminated into a series borrowing from other genres in order to attract an audience, and in the process, demonstrating how genre theory can be applied to the video game medium.